That's us. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the final 2025 Angus IJB. Hope everybody's got all the Christmas shopping done. Spent £20 in Christmas cards earlier on, and I'm sure my kids would have probably actually preferred the money than the Christmas card, but there we go. So anyway, welcome to this hybrid meeting of the Integrated Joint Board. I would remind all attendees that this meeting is being recorded and webcast live on the Council's YouTube channel. I have agreed the attendance of some members remotely and would remind all remote attendees to mute their microphones when not speaking. For any members of the public watching, please note that all the public committee reports, including details of specific recommendations, are available on the Council's website. Before we move to the agenda, I would like to advise members that report number IJB 108/25, item 15, Angus IJB Audit Committee restructuring proposal, has been withdrawn from the agenda and will now be considered by the IJB in February 2026. Okay, so if we can move to apologies, please.
Thank you, Chair. We have apologies from Councillor Louise Nicholl. We have apologies from Martin Black with Linda Martingale substituting. Apologies from Chris Boyle with Rod Taylor substituting. Apologies from Hayley Mearns. That is all.
Declarations of interest and statements of transparency. Do we have any? Nope. Excellent. Okay, so that moves us on to item 3A, the minute of the previous meeting submitted for approval as a correct record. Can we agree it? Yep. Thank you. Item 3B, action log. Agree to note the action log. Yep, excellent. And takes us on to 3C, Special Audit Committee, minute of the 29th of October. Again, do we agree to note? Yep. And the Chair's assurance report for the Strategic Planning Group. Again, can we agree to note? Yep. Excellent, thank you. Okay, so that moves us on to item 4, appointments to the Angus Integration Joint Board, and I'll hand over to Jill.
Thank you, Chair. So the report before you has 3 recommendations in relation to appointments. Standard appointments, five recommendations if you go across the page. Standard appointments paper, Chair, so just happy to move to the recommendations with members.
Are we happy to agree? Yep. Thank you. And item 5, Chief Officer update. Again, back to yourself, Jill.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Again, just a routine update report that comes to IJB for members' awareness. Just a couple of things to pull out in relation to the official opening of the Beacon, which went well. And I am aware that there is a further opportunity for IJB members to visit the Beacon in the new year. But other than that, Chair, happy to take any comments or questions.
Do we have any questions? Nope. Just say I attended the official opening of the Beacon Centre, and if you haven't had a chance to attend, I would thoroughly recommend it. Absolutely superb, and I think it will be the gold standard for the rest of the country to follow. So well done to all the staff. Okay, so we're happy to agree the recommendations. Thank you. Okay, that moves us on to item 6, the service user story. The Angus Integration Joint Board voting members are asked to consider in terms of the Board's Standing Order 11.2 whether the public and press should be excluded during consideration of item 6 so as to avoid the disclosure of information which is exempt in terms of Part 1 of Schedule 7A to the Local Government Scotland Act 1973. If agreed, then we will stop the live stream. We agreed? Yep, thank you.
Can we stop the live stream, please? Again, please.
Okay. That moves us on to item 7, the annual Chief Social Work Officer report for 24-25, and that would be yourself, Kirsty.
Good afternoon. That item that we've just discussed there was a really good precursor, I think, to the discussion on the Chief Social Work Officer report. I'm sorry we couldn't have made that public, but we need to preserve the anonymity of our young people. But it was certainly a very healthy discussion about the challenges facing young people who are transitioning from children to adult services. So thank you. So I welcome the opportunity today to bring my annual Chief Social Work Officer report to the board, outlining the work being delivered across children, adults and justice, social work and social care services. The joint presentation of this report with John Cooper, our lead social work professional, is an important opportunity for us to reflect on achievements, challenges and areas for improvement, ensuring robust oversight and accountability for all social work functions, including those delegated to the IJB. The report demonstrates that on the whole, despite a challenging financial and legislative environment, our staff continue to meet need and manage risk effectively across Angus. This year we have continued our work to improve recruitment and retention of social workers and can report improved staff data this year across many services, in particular where there have been stubborn vacancies, we have seen some improvement. The inspection of children at risk of harm evaluated partnership working and leadership is very good, and also recognised specifically the contribution of social work in leading a learning and improvement culture and listening and acting on the views of children and their families.
Thanks, Kirsty. Yep, we're facing persistent resource pressures, particularly due to underfunding for new legislative duties and rising costs in areas such as external placements and specialist provision, as well as unmet need for care at home services, which is often highlighted within IJB. Despite these challenges, there are many examples of innovative practice and improvement work, notably the use of Magic Notes pilot, which is an AI tool to support staff, the expansion of family-based care and community supports for children and adults, and the embedding of reflective practice and joint practitioner development forums. So we invite the board to note and endorse the contents of this year's report prior to its submission to the Scottish Government, and we welcome any questions or comments that you may have. Thank you.
Do we have any questions, comments? Yes, Lewis.
Yep, thank you. Yeah, thank you for this report, because I do always feel that the social work report is always dead factual and honest, and you know it does say it like it is. It highlights the pressures. It doesn't try to kind of gloss over a lot of the big problems that we do have. Resourcing obviously being one of them. I am aware that there are often a lot of children and families that do have a disability or health need who don't even make it past the first post in terms of an assessment of need under self-directed support. And I appreciate that perhaps is because of the resourcing issues and pressures on budgets. But if you were to apply a quality impact assessment, it would state that age should not, we shouldn't discriminate a child or a family because of age. And I just wondered, what conversations are had with Scottish Government around highlighting the fact that we do have these resourcing issues and not everyone is, we're not managing to support everyone in the way we would like.
So I can give a wee bit of context on that, and then if anyone else wants to come in. So, as you say, these are national resourcing issues. So the two main ways that we contribute to highlighting these and the needs of our Angus children, families and adults is through COSLA and a representation in terms of COSLA, and importantly Social Work Scotland, where we have good and full representation across the range of Chief Social Work Officer meetings and subgroups. And one of them being around self-directed support. We're very active in that space. So in terms of reporting on some of these challenges and issues, then we do that. That's very frustrating that there is just simply not enough to go around. We know that. We know that even the increase in costs, that budget allocation is not keeping pace with that, so it cuts in a different way. In terms of the bit about children not making it past the first post, I suppose I'm not entirely sure about that. I guess, do you mean in terms of getting to the point of assessment and then not being allocated? So they do get to the point of assessment and their needs are deemed not at that level?
I think often in terms of casework that comes my way, perhaps they're maybe just because of their age, and yet they might have a complex disability or health condition. They might, be a regular attending appointments within the health and social care system, but when it comes to actually that assessment and need, they're perhaps not they're not even getting to the assessment stage because they're perhaps being signposted to third sector agencies and areas of support, but ultimately it's not really kind of helping support the family in their day-to-day kind of care and role and helping their young person to maybe access the same opportunities as other young people their age.
So it's difficult to comment globally on that, because I think if every child is having an assessment, then how they're being cared for by their parents at home comes into that assessment, and their age and their mobility, etc., comes into that as well. So by that fact, I guess there is an age issue, because if you're caring for a very small child, you'll anticipate their needs will be very different, in 10 years or so. So I'm assuming that's the way where we're coming from. But for me, the assessment and the social work function needs to consider all of the strengths in that family and the resources that they're drawing on and what their needs are likely to be right now. Families' needs change all the time, and we need to be open to reassessing that. So I'm not sure I can be any much more specific. In terms of, though, more universal provision and a wider range of services to support all families, absolutely we would welcome that, and we know for a fact through things like our whole family wellbeing fund, so children with a disability, that is part of the criteria for that. There is a huge gap between our statutory top end services and our universal provision, and that gap is ever widening because of the financial climate over the last 10 years. And that absolutely is a gap, and that's something that I'll advocate for really strongly through our Chief Social Work Officer meetings, through COSLA papers that come to us, and through this board and our Integrated Children's Services as well, because they're absolutely, Lois, as you point out, is not enough.
Okay, Chris, you want to come in?
Thanks. One of the challenges you've got is adults with highly complex learning disability. Now, it's a highly vulnerable group of people who, for a number of reasons, if they come into contact with hospital services acutely, it can be detrimental to their health and well-being. Are we assured that for that group, when they do have provision in the community, that they've got everything wrapped around them the same way that our frail elderly population have, to reduce that risk of hospitalisation and reduce that risk of harm?
Thank you, Chris, for that comment. And you're right, it is very challenging for a very small cohort of people with complex learning disabilities, and identifying resources, not just in Angus, but across Scotland, is hugely difficult. But the good news is that we are working across the 3 health and social care partnerships to look at a possible resource for people who require sort of specialist provision that we can't get through national providers, etc., in order to meet their needs more locally, i.e. in Tayside. And we're also working on an intensive support service to allow people that need that wraparound care, that need that sort of behavioural support intensively put in, to make sure that all their health needs are met. It is available locally, and that's something that we are developing, that we should have some more information for into the new year, that we can share in our learning disability updates that we bring. So we do recognise that that is something that is really, really difficult for a small group, but we are putting a lot of extensive effort in to try and address these challenges. So hopefully that gives some reassurance. Thank you.
Is it Jill first, or yeah?
Yeah, thank you. And alongside that, obviously we'll still have to work with the healthcare professionals in terms of that wraparound care and anticipatory care planning element to individuals, so that if they do have to go into hospital, it's really clear what is required, what they need, what support they need around them when they do go in, and hopefully then that will allow us to get them out quicker as well. So alongside that kind of provision, there is the desire and the need to continue to work with healthcare professionals with that wraparound healthcare support as well.
Just to add to that, we wouldn't be discriminating against people on the basis of age. We have our general practice services, our enhanced community support that should be working according to people's needs. There is obviously bespoke needs for people with learning disability, and other needs such as alcohol brain injury is another one where we do need to adapt our tailored approach. Regarding future care planning, we are doing work in Angus around a place-based approach to future care planning, where rather than doing it in individual services, we're taking a whole system approach, and I think that's quite exciting as well. But absolutely recognise that we need to be looking after all our population proactively and with care tailored around the person, and not just focusing on frail elderly.
Thanks, Alison. Any other comments? I had a question just around, it's more just curiosity. You talked about the Magic Notes AI pilot. I just wondered, could you maybe just explain a bit more to a layman what that is, because it sounds quite exciting.
I mean, so it's a tool that has been developed for social care. So it's an AI tool in that it's an administrative support. So it's not applying AI thinking to assessments, it's not predicting need, it's not doing any of that. And I think they're the scary things around AI. What it's doing is reducing the administrative burden. So it is, you can put Magic Notes on when you have a conversation with someone with their consent. It will very quickly identify their accent, it'll pick it up, and it will translate it into a format that we put into the system. So if we have, these are areas that we would cover in assessment for foster carers, for example, it will take that, what could be a 2-hour conversation, and put it into the correct kind of format. It's then for the social worker to read that and ensure that that is an accurate reflection and share it with the person. It can record professional meetings in the same way that other AI tools do. What it doesn't do is replace the judgment and the responsibility of the social worker to ensure that is a true reflection. So in traditional practice, we'll maybe carry out a 2-hour conversation, go away, take notes, and have to sit and then put them into a system. This allows that to happen much more quickly. So I have to say that the feedback from the pilot so far and from the workforce is very positive. Whether it needs to be Magic Notes in the future, the pilot will conclude, what's good about that particular product. But what we have is a particularly hungry workforce for AI and tools that allow them to spend more time with people rather than feeding the systems that we have in place. So, thanks.
Okay, thanks for that, Kirsty. And you kind of answered my follow-up question, which was going to be, is the AI then trying to do the assessment? But you've kind of clarified that. Okay, so we've got no other kind of questions. I welcome the report. Really, I really like the little spotlight sections that you had. I think Lois kind of sort of mentioned, it's quite a factual report and it gives it a bit of colour and a bit of life. So just like to thank yourself and John for all the hard work that's gone into pulling that together. And are we happy to approve the recommendation? Yes, excellent, thank you. That takes us on to item 8, review of directions, policy and procedure. And back to yourself, Jill.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So members will have the updated directions, policy and procedure as part of the papers. The changes have been noted in the version control section of the policy itself. So quite straightforward, Chair. We're happy to move straight to the recommendations or questions.
Any questions? Are we happy to approve the recommendations? Yep. Excellent. Okay, thank you. That takes us on to item 9, the review of Angus Integration Joint Board's standing orders. And back to yourself again, Jill.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So the papers before you have the updated tracked change version of the standing orders. A number of those changes have been undertaken just as a bit of a review and a tidy up of our standing orders, and others have taken have been taken as a result of the development session that we had back in September, I think it was. It feels a bit long ago. Thank you, Liz. So hopefully they accurately reflect the discussion at the development session, and happy to move straight to questions or comments and recommendations.
Questions, observations? Happy to approve the recommendation. Lois?
I was given anybody else the opportunity to come in. Yeah, I actually tried to submit a motion to IGB this week, but it was ruled not competent because although I felt there was a link to one of the agenda items, I don't think that link was seen to be strong enough. So there is nowhere within our standing orders to bring a standalone motion. And I just wondered if that's something that could be considered. And it's really only come to light because I tried to submit one and couldn't. And but do feel that whether it be myself or anybody else in future that may wish to bring one, there's not a provision there to do that. And there's also not a provision within the standing orders to suspend the standing orders, should the chair be minded to, whether that be in terms of a motion or anything else.
So with regards to your first point there, Councillor Speed, we do have this provision within the Angus Council standing orders, which I'll read to members, and if the voting members are content, we can add them into section 15 of the proposed changes. So at any meeting, any member, in accordance with provision of standing orders, may propose a motion which does not directly relate to an item of business under consideration at the meeting. Prior notice in writing of such motion must be given to the Director of Legal Governance and Change at least 14 days before the meeting, and the convener shall determine the competency and relevance of the motion.
Is everybody content with that? I'm certainly used to having a kind of clause like that that kind of gives the flexibility, because we do need to have some flexibility around taking on the kind of views and everything. George?
Yeah, I mean, I would be happy with it. It's, as I say, it's done by Angus Council. You know, yeah. Why not?
Yep, so you happy with that, Lois? Yeah? Linda, you've got your hand up. Sorry.
Thank you. So this is just a question about point 5.8. So other than the live webcasting or recording of the Angus Integration Joint Board and Audit Committee, any video or sound recordings or broadcasting of meetings by any other means, or the taking of any photographs will be at the Chair's discretion. Apologies if I've not seen this in the document, but I wonder if there's anything around asking for those to be destroyed within a certain period of time. You know, just in terms of good information governance.
Thanks, Linda. We're just looking. Sarah, you've got your hand up.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I just sorry, I'm getting a bit of feedback from my microphone. Yeah, thank you. I just wondered if it might be helpful to confirm the terms of the Angus Council position. So Angus Council took a decision a couple of years ago, I think, that we would destroy the recordings after 5 years. So that 5 years would be the term of the elected members. So from 2022 to 2027 would be the 5-year term of elected members being in their position. So it's not to say that we couldn't do something similar with the IJB, depending on what would be an appropriate length of time to hold those on the website. Whilst it doesn't need to be part of the standing order document, it could actually just be a written agreement that's what we would do.
Linda, do you want to come back in?
Thanks. I mean, that's really helpful, and I guess maybe yeah, it doesn't need to be in this document, but it was just to check that somewhere there is some sort of policy around how long recordings or transcripts are kept for.
Thank you. Kirsty, are you wanting to come in? Sorry, Lois, were you going to come back in?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. It was just really to seek clarity in terms of the addition, if everybody does agree today, to the motion being included. Does that also include an emergency motion? I'm just thinking, should any, hopefully not, but should there be any health and social care emergencies or unforeseen circumstances, would it be possible to put in an emergency?
Sarah, are you able to come back on that one?
Yes, of course, no problem. So I don't think that currently there is any provision to bring an emergency motion, but what we can ensure is that the chair can rule on such matters. So whilst a motion may be submitted out with the 14-day period, it would be a matter for the chair to determine competency, relevancy and urgency.
Yep, you happy with that, Lois? Yep, excellent. Kirsty, you want to come in again now?
Yeah, I'm not sure it's an amendment to this or not, but I guess it's just following the conversations we've just had on the deputation that was made to Angus Council around care experience and a protected characteristic. I just wonder how easy and accessible we make it for people to make an appropriate deputation, in particular people with protected characteristics. And I'm thinking about care experience young people or people who access services when we're making decisions that will ultimately affect them. How good is our public information? How good is our engagement? And I say that really for Angus Council and for the IJB, and is there something we need to think about in that respect? It certainly got me thinking about how we encourage our care experience young people to make appropriate deputations, or if they feel able and willing to do that. It certainly wasn't particularly easy for the young person who stepped forward to make a deputation, because young people tell us all of the time we invite them into our world, and the rules are pretty firm on that. That's not comfortable for them, and she was able to make a video deputation that was accepted, but I'm not sure we're open to that in the best possible way. And so it's not a change. I don't think it needs to be in the standing order, but I do wonder if there is some work we need to do collectively to ensure that we are accessible and that it's encouraged and there's information that's there, and that where appropriate and the standing orders allow, that we're flexible, because it's really important. Thanks.
Yeah, I mean, I think you make a good point, and I think deputations at the best of times can be quite daunting coming into quite a formal environment, and the equality impact assessment and the review, but I think it's maybe part and parcel of that review as well, is just to look at how we can be more open to have deputations that are more in line with making the deputies, is that the right expression, more comfortable to be able to kind of do that, because it is important that we get to hear from people that want to make deputations, but we have to do it in a way that allows them to do it in a confident and supportive manner, I think, going forward. So I think that's something, if you look at that as a wider piece of work.
Thanks, Kirsty. I just want to say, from our kind of perspective, we would be as flexible and as helpful as we could be if someone was to get in touch with us wanting to do any deputation. So just to reassure that I speak on behalf of myself and the team that we would be flexible and do what we can to provide the support that they would need.
And I would say that's exactly what happened, but because we've not really given it a huge amount of consideration, we're on the back foot. It's a power imbalance straight away for anybody coming in here to make a deputation. And when we're making decisions that affect people, it's just something it's triggered my own thinking around this. Kim, who made the deputation, has triggered my thinking around this, because she was very clear in saying, I'm not coming in there, that is not my space, and she was right. So I think there is something in that there appears to be a willingness, I think, in this chamber to do something different, maybe be a wee bit more forward thinking in that respect, so we are a bit more inclusive. But thank you.
No, good point. Sarah, you've got your hand up again.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I think just as Kirsty said, there's certainly some work to be done around deputations and how we encourage deputations, both in our own council forum and the IJB. And I think we could maybe have a look at the wording just to try and make it as flexible as possible. I know that within the report, there's delegation to the Chief Officer to make minor amendments, but I think if we could come up with a form of words that makes it as flexible as possible, whether the board would be agreeable to us just making that change between officers and the Chief Officer, if that's appropriate.
Yep, I think everyone happy with that. Yep. Okay. Happy to approve the recommendations subject to the amendment that you've outlined earlier. Yep. Excellent. Okay, thank you. And thank you to all the staff for all the work that went into that, because I know it's quite a big job. Okay, that takes us on to the item 10, the finance report, which is Sandy Berry, who no doubt is going to leave us with a lot of good Christmas cheer at his final IJB meeting. So I'm sure we'll all be swimming in cash in the next 10 minutes.
Okay, sorry, I wasn't listening to any of that, but never mind. Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I mean, I suppose I am saying this for the last time, introducing the financial report. I have done about 60 of these, which is quite galling. So if I feel like I'm repeating myself, I probably am. You've probably heard some of this before. But yeah, this is our latest financial report for this financial year. It's got the usual content. I'm just going to pick out about half a dozen key points, Chair, if I may. And I'll just go through them sequentially through the report. Just at the top of the second page, section 4.2 of the report briefly summarises where we are in terms of our overall position. Our projected position for this year is still an operational underspend of about £2.2 million, not far away from what we've reported before. We have got a proposal to deploy some of that underspend this year, and I'll touch on that later on in this item. On the second page again, under section 5.12 and 5.13, I'm flagging them up. They're about lead partner services. I flagged them up in the context of just noting that these provide the finance context for reports later on today's agenda. Out of hours services, obviously a lead partner service, but we have the annual lead partner report later on the agenda. But those elements of this report are always here in terms of describing where we are with the regional lead partner services. Moving on to the third page of the report, section 5.1.4 is a wee update about prescribing. I just need to highlight that because there is a significant variance on that compared with our plan. We do still report an overspend, but it's not as significant as we forecast at the start of the year, and that has contributed to our financial position as described elsewhere in this report. It's worth the board keeping in mind that in our work plan in the February IJB meeting, February 26 meeting, we do have an annual prescribing report coming forward, and that will probably provide more detail about where we have been this year and where we're going with prescribing. It's a big part of the IJB's overall budget and has been subject to some variation over the years. And along in the context of issues associated with prescribing, it's also worth noting previously the IJB has discussed the issue about the resourcing of new drug developments and how they are managed within primary care, and that's maybe something that we might see an update on by the time we get to the February meeting. Moving further on in the report to section 5.4, which is the outlook section. This has got some forward-looking things, as you can tell by the title. One of the sections in there, 5.411, is about a new way of presenting where we are with developing our planned interventions. And this paragraph here describes what we have set out in Appendix 2. It's essentially a first sharing of an assurance-based approach to describing where we are with our planned interventions. It is a new approach. There's an element of subjectivity on it. And obviously at the moment, in terms of this report, that is the subjectivity being exercised by the Chief Finance Officer. But we're hopeful this gives members a kind of a visual insight about how we're progressing. It does demonstrate the challenges of progressing things that we've already agreed to, and those, of course, are key to the delivery of a strong financial position that will sustain services going forward. Moving slightly on in the report to 5.4.2, where we just give an update about the financial shortfalls that have been evident in this year's financial plan since we first shared it as a draft in February. We did have a request from the IJB to bring proposals back to the IJB by June 25, outlining how we would close the financial gap. We did bring a number of proposals back in addition to close the full gap. The management team are still working on this. I think we hoped that we maybe be a bit further on, but the into February IJB meeting, we will have further information to share with board members. Last couple of points, still in that general, the outlook section, but moving on to section 5.441, there is a proposal there to realign some budgets. These are not, I'd rather than describe what they're not, I should describe what they actually are. These are interim and initial adjustments, perhaps partial adjustments to try and realign some of our budgets within the partnership, to rebalance some of the issues that we've described in previous financial plans, where we have some long-standing imbalances in the budgetary arrangements of the partnership. So these are not necessarily endpoints, but these are recommendations we're making to rebalance the budget incrementally at this stage in the year before further consideration later on in this in the next planning cycle. And, Chair, the final point I want to highlight to the board is in section 5.6. This is about the deployment of funding. I briefly mentioned that a couple of minutes ago. At the IJB meeting in October, we reflected on likely underspends in this year and some unallocated reserves from last year, roughly about £2.4 million. We have shared some proposals, as was agreed at the last meeting, with voting members. These have not been agreed by the voting members as such, because they are for agreement today. They're proposals for today. They do reflect mainly our role in the wider system and the pressures that are already evident in the wider system that we operate in, particularly pressures within our partner organisations. And it is fair to say NHS Tayside is already looking at a difficult financial position this year, and would be grateful for our financial support to support them during this financial year. And I think keeping in mind our relationship with the two key partners that we have is a key point that's been part of bringing these proposals together. But they are part of the recommendations today, Chair. So that's the main points I want to highlight. And of course, I'm happy to take any questions and deal with any comments, Chair.
Do we have any questions or comments for Sandy, or are we just going to let him slip away into the sunset? I've got one quick question, Sandy, just in terms of the allocation of the 200,000 to reserves. See in the reserves appendix, that 200,000 isn't reflected in the reserves appendix. Have I read that right? Yeah.
We possibly haven't put it in there yet because of contingency reserve, and because we haven't decided it yet, we haven't actioned it yet. But when we do that £200,000 adjustment, it will appear in a future report, because we will then be saying that will happen. And what we're trying there, I assume you're talking about the contingency reserve. We're basically, we do hold a contingency reserve that's linked to 8% of our turnover. Turnover goes up every year, if for no other reason than pay inflation and all the other inflation elements, and this just helps that figure keep pace with it, which is in line with our reserves policy. It'll appear in the next version of this report.
Brilliant, that's just what I thought. Thanks. Happy to approve the recommendations. And sorry, Lois.
Yeah, I just didn't want to jump in too quickly in case anybody else wanted to ask a question. It would be really remiss of me, Sandy, to let you go without not asking a couple of questions, and highlighting and stressing again concerns around the deployment of monies back to the council and IJB when we do have our own financial pressures, and you have always explained very well the rationale behind that. However, I just wondered, in terms of the realignments of budgets, I do welcome that, because I think, as I've highlighted before, I think that often teams, it's not necessarily an overspend, it actually just is a fairer reflection of the need the type of services and supports that's required for them to operate and meet the needs of people. But there are other areas that have underspends, and I just, for example, occupational therapy, another area where we know has been pressured in terms of resourcing, and I just wondered how you came to the conclusions around the realignments that we have before us.
Okay, yeah, thanks, Lewis. Firstly, scale. In terms of the realignments, firstly, scale. These are some of the bigger ones. And so when I was introducing that element of the report, I didn't say these were definitive final positions or scientifically put together. These are kind of interim steps. They're very much partial responses to the type of issue you describe. And I will just, earlier on in the report, we mentioned how significant some of the overspends in these areas are. The prescribed figure is over £2 million overspent, the disability services, and I'm just trying to find the figure so I quote it accurately, something like 1.8 and 1.4 million pounds overspent for learning disabilities and physical disabilities individually. We don't have the capacity to fund all our services that are overspending. Services are meant to operate to an agreed budget. Clearly, that's not always possible for many, many reasons. So these are described as in the initial steps to rebalance. So the reason why these ones have been put lowest is partly because of scale, but there are also areas that we did trail when we were setting out the strategic financial plan, I think in either February or April. So we did flag up that there were some areas we would probably start to look to rebalance. So that's why it's not necessarily an endpoint. But the IJB's financial position isn't able to cope with funding services, all services that overspend. It can only do that on an agreed basis. I don't think there was a question earlier on, but I do entirely recognise the points that you've made regarding the deployment of reserves. What you've said just now is this year or now is consistent with things that you've said before, and I do recognise those. And we've obviously had in this meeting and other forums a chance to discuss the kind of balance of things that we're trying to take into account.
I found myself off. Have absolutely no concerns around the realignment of within the kind of the groups that are highlighted and are being asked for approval. It was really just to find out a bit more, because there are other areas that also have very large overspends, and again you've highlighted that it would be impossible to give everybody an increase in their budget, which probably leads me on to my other question before we conclude, if that's okay. And it takes me back to the when I highlighted that I had tried to bring a motion to IJB, and it was with regards to highlighting COSLA's 25-26 budget campaign. And their campaign, Strong Councils, Strong Communities, is calling for an immediate £750 million investment in social care to address the projected £497.5 million funding gap across integrated joint boards in Scotland. The social work report has highlighted the pressures. Your report, Sandy, in terms of this financial paper, albeit not going into the budget, that we're still waiting to find out more on. But I guess I just wondered if perhaps without, obviously through a motion, whether there could be support from IJB to, support COSLA's budget campaign. Is that something that this IJB could do, given, the worrying picture that we have?
I'll need to take advice. I suppose my only point of clarification there, Lois, was you were referring to 25-26.
So this is their 25 and 26.
So we're looking to campaign against the 25-26 allocation, or the 26-27 future years allocation, sorry.
Sorry, yeah, for clarity. So, yeah, COSLA's budget campaign for this year into next is in relation to what would be the 26-27 budget, which we will be looking at and considering in due course. So it was to support the campaign that just got launched last week. And I just think that given, COSLA's ambitious call for £750 million investment in social care, and given the challenges that we have, I just wondered if in principle the IGB could support that call.
I'm happy
To can I take an officer in here to Jill?
Yeah, thank you. So I guess in terms of a point of clarity, what does that support look like? Because there's a number of national networks where there's the chair and the vice chair networks who are also in discussion in relation to this. The National Chief Officers Group are in discussion around it, as are the Chief Finance Officers as well. So we are already part of that conversation through our national networks. So we absolutely recognise the fiscal pressures across the health and social care system, but in terms of clarity, what do you mean by support, Lois?
Just that, I guess, in principle, that the IGB endorse and support COSLA's campaign, and perhaps maybe if, whether it be yourself, Chair, or yourself, Chief Executive, were to formally write and show support, write to Scottish Government to support, in support of the ask.
Jill.
Thanks, Chairs, and thanks, Lois. So that's not something that we would normally do, and our comments are being taken into consideration as part of the national discussions in the national group around financial viability. So it's not something that we would normally do in terms of the chairs and vice chairs network and discussions. I know that similar conversations are taking place. So, Tina or Liz, is there a view? Yeah.
Yeah, if I could maybe just come in first. I mean, through the chairs and the vice chairs. I mean, Peter Louise wasn't here. I wasn't sure she was the last one of the one before. We're certainly being vociferous with the Scottish Government around supporting the COSLA position. I think we're probably one of the few IJBs that are probably sitting with an underspend this year. I think almost all others are in a much more detrimental financial position. So that voice has certainly been heard across the piece. I mean, we can take in officers. I suppose it's not really for officers to write to the Scottish Government on what would be a political kind of issue. The only way I can kind of think would be for us to instruct officers to write on our behalf or something along those lines, but I'm not quite sure how. I'm not sure the logistics of it, but
maybe our officers could advise.
Is that something that we could?
Sarah's got her hand up.
Thank you, Chair. I think, whilst I understand, you know, what we're saying in terms of the ask of officers, it could be that officers essentially write on your behalf as the chair of the, or whether we could draft something for yourself to issue. What would normally happen in these circumstances is that it would be for something that the chair could do individually, or individual members of the board could they lend their support and issue correspondence if that was what members wished to do, or whether you wanted to do it collectively, then that could be through yourself, Chair. I'm not sure if that actually helps.
No, I think it does. What's your thoughts, Lois?
I think if I'm right in thinking, Sarah, that yeah, you could draft something for perhaps yourself, Steve, to write on behalf of the IGB, just to express support.
Sarah, you want to come back in?
Yes, thank you, Chair. It would be quite usual for myself as the manager of the team to do that, but certainly we could have a conversation perhaps with yourself, Chair, just around that correspondence and how we take that forward. I guess if you're willing to do that as chair of the board, then we could support you with that ask.
Would the board members kind of support that kind of view that we get a letter basically sort of outlining in essence, I suppose it's a request to, or not a request, it's with supporting the kind of position that health and social care is generally underfunded at the present time, notwithstanding I'm sure other sectors have got the same kind of challenges when our councillors go back to the council, probably doing something similar. Would all the board members be comfortable with that, George?
Clearly, I wouldn't have an issue because I've already supported it via COSLA, through COSLA leaders, but it's for everybody else to give their opinion.
Sam, Linda?
Yeah. I don't have strong views, Steve. If you're happy to put your name to that, then if you're happy with what's proposed, then I would go along with it. Yeah. But obviously, we'd have to see what they propose to put in that correspondence first. Yeah. But in principle, yes.
Yeah. In principle, I'm also happy with that, Steve. Yeah. I don't think it's controversial, is it?
It's kind of a statement of fact, really, isn't it? So, Tina.
I'm just minded that you're having to decide this on the hop a little bit, and I wonder whether it's something that you've heard from your fellow voting members, whether it's something that you want to take time to consider, and we'll do that. We can liaise about that. That's not a problem. I just feel like it's something that perhaps you don't know the full parameters of, or wish to look at some information. That's all.
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking if we maybe drafted something, circulated it to all the voting members, and then if everyone was kind of content, then obviously I can then sign it and send it. Does that seem like a sensible way forward? Is everyone happy with that?
Yeah, apologies, didn't really mean to put anyone on the spot, but yeah, I appreciate everybody's support, and I'm quite content if perhaps there could be a reference, just a line within the minute, and a follow-up if you're able to circulate perhaps a draft for everyone to look over, and yeah, I'd be really pleased with that way forward. I do intend to write myself in support to Scottish Government, but I do feel that it would be really good for the IJB to provide that support and as well.
Okay, excellent. Happy to approve the recommendations and obviously minute that. Yep. Okay, that takes us on to item 11, the Tayside GP out of hours service, and that's yourself again, Jill.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So members have the associated documents as part of the combined paper, so I'm not going to go through the full paper, but this paper does come forward to the IJB as a follow-up from the joint development session and the work that the teams have been undertaking with colleagues across Tayside, where we have been exploring the strategic direction for the GP out of our service. And reflected, hopefully collectively, on the system challenges, the learning from tests of changes that have been undertaken as part of the out of hours improvement work, and opportunities for whole system reform. Members will be aware that Angus IGB holds the lead partner responsibility for strategic coordination and operational responsibility of the GP out of hours service on behalf of NHS Tayside. And this strategic framework has been developed collaboratively with Dundee and Perth and Kinross Health and Social Care Partnerships and other key stakeholders, including NHS 24 and Scottish Ambulance Service colleagues. And In addition to that, we have done a lot of engagement with our public and public partners, including carers, to help inform the direction of travel. In line with the integration scheme, all 3 IJBs are required to consider and approve the strategic direction to ensure consistency and alignment shared across the region. So the framework today is presented that sets out a clear evidence-based direction of travel for the next decade, shaped by extensive engagement and feedback from not only our development session across the region, but multiple engagement sessions with a number of stakeholders. The paper has been approved by Dundee IJB. It was presented there last Wednesday, and earlier on today it was presented to Perth and Kinross IJB, and it was also approved at P&K. So the ask is for Angus to approve the strategic framework and to support and approve the direction to NHS Tayside, enabling the next phase of work to progress. And that is taken account of the options, going through a co-design service model options appraisal, and that's really where we've got to. Thank you, Chair. Happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Joe. Do we have any questions? Or are we happy to approve the Lewis?
Thank you. It was actually just in light of the agreement in principle to look at our equality impact assessments and the inclusion of care experienced. And I guess this would be perhaps just an example of a part of the system that some of our young people may struggle to navigate. And I just wondered if that will be taken into considering given what we agreed earlier in principle.
Yeah, absolutely, Lewis. So in terms of the work that's already started, we have started the quality impact assessment already. It's an ongoing, it's an iterative document that we are working on throughout this, and each model that we come up with as a potential option will have its own EQIA aligned with it. We are also using them around how we go out and engage with the public. So yes,
that addition will be added within this work as well. Thank you.
Okay, excellent. I think I answered. Yeah, I suppose just a small question from me, just around how will it be reported back once the option appraisal has been completed, so we get to see what the kind of preferred option is?
So in the direction, Chair, we have included a report back time of April 26 to come back to the IJB. The only slight challenge with that at the moment is just following on from one of our ongoing meetings with Health Improvement Scotland as part of the work around engagement. We may have to undertake more of a detailed engage or a different way of engagement in line with Health Improvement Scotland's new, Sally could probably come in here, their new framework, if what we come forward with it as a preferred option is deemed as a major service change. That may delay the timescale, but we are working very closely with Health Improvement Scotland around that.
Okay, thanks for that. Happy to approve the recommendations? Yeah, excellent. Thank you, everyone. That takes us on to item 12, lead partner service update, and yourself again, Joe.
Thank you, Chair, and really happy to bring what is our second Angus lead partner update. We brought our first one last October, and this is our second one, and members will see that we have incorporated lead partner service updates from both Dundee and Perth and Kinross in addition. So a really important milestone, I think, for us in terms of how we are reporting on our lead partner arrangements, not just from an Angus perspective, but across the patch. And all 3 IJBs have also considered this report in their December meetings as well. So the expanded reporting approach reflects a general kind of collective commitment to strengthening our collaborative governance and enhancing that regional oversight around our lead partner services. It also ensures that vital services delivered on our behalf from other health and social care partnership services are visible within the Angus IJB. So happy to, as we take forward, we are on a bit of a journey with this report, and you will probably next year it will look quite different again, but it is something that we're really keen to further develop and enhance. It's something that from an internal audit perspective they've been keen that we deliver on. It was one of our actions from a previous internal audit under the lead partner arrangement. So really glad to bring it forward to Chair and happy to take any questions.
Any questions, Kirsty?
Thanks very much, Jill. It is really helpful actually to see that information in the round. So there's a kind of question in it, I guess, information that relates to children and young people in terms of the shared services. I do wonder about how we ensure that gets into our integrated children's services group, because I'm here with different hats on and reading some of this for the first time. I can already pick out some missed opportunities maybe, or some future opportunities in terms of, say, whole family wellbeing and support for children and young people. So and see that some of the interesting developments in Dundee around pregnancy care and what have you, and that are fairly Dundee centric but looking to expand out. So I do wonder if this report, once it's been here and approved, if there's agreement that the relevant parts are extrapolated into a report for Integrated Children's Services Partnership. I think that would be really helpful. So thank you for that. I just had a brief question on the forensic medical and custody healthcare and the ongoing issue that I know is really difficult about choice of the sex of the examiner. And my question, I know we're working hard to address that, but I guess my question is how is it impacting on people who are coming for a forensic medical? So is the impact that they don't feel comfortable to proceed, or is it not impacting that way? But how are we collecting information about their experience, any additional trauma, anything around that, so that we can help to mitigate that risk whilst we're trying to ensure we meet the standards? Thanks.
Yeah, I'll just invite Alison in, who's been chairing a group looking at this, and Lisa might want to come in from a service perspective as well. Kirsty.
So within the service, we have a nurse who is available and works on supporting the people who come through the service. So there has been quite a lot of work in terms of improving our service to people. They do receive a very person-centred care, and I'm not aware of any cases where, due to the lack of a choice of forensic medical examiner, they have not proceeded with examination. But we are also working on nurses being able to carry out and support some elements of examination, and there is the opportunity to refer to sexual health, although they do carry out the screenings within the service wherever possible. In terms of the improvement work, we haven't managed to successfully secure a choice of forensic medical examiner at all times, but there is always the opportunity to delay your examination to see somebody of your choice if you would wish. So there is a bit of a balance there between having the examination on the most timely basis, which is ideal, and waiting until there's some more choice. It is more person-centred, for example, to carry out examinations during daytime hours, and we do offer that where it's appropriate for the individual. So there, alongside the choice of forensic, sex of your forensic medical examiner, there is also a lot of improvement work, particularly linking with the public protection team on some quality improvement, looking at how we support people, particularly those who are coming through the service on a frequent basis, and how do we have a very trauma-informed approach for these individuals. Thank you.
Yeah, and I think, Kirsty, just in addition to that, in terms of what Alison was saying around they have the opportunity to delay, it obviously depends whether it's a self-referral or whether it's a police examination. So we have to balance that up as well, so that we are able to preserve evidence where we need to. And just in relation to your integrated children's services, absolutely happy to support that, and I think hopefully that will continue to demonstrate our commitment to working closer with children's services.
Lewis?
Yeah, just as a follow-on from that, in terms of the forensic and custody healthcare service, and I'm thinking perhaps of individuals who may need a BSL interpreter or an interpreter if English isn't their first language. I'm just wondering, how easy, how accessible is it for the team involved and the person themselves to access that support, because it's obviously a very difficult time going through that.
Yeah, so the individuals will have the same opportunity and same access to any other service if they require that level of support.
I just wondered though, in reality, how easy is it to tap into British Sign Language, or is it, those services are able to do that in a timely way? There's no kind of blockages within the system or the referral route for that impacts on their...
No, there isn't, Lois, that I'm aware of, and I don't know if Grace, if you want to come in on that.
No, we have our very robust NHS Tayside interpretation and translation process that works really well. It's regularly audited, so that access to any of these, including BSL, is absolutely available, and the teams have done a lot of good work in relation to that, so I'm not aware of any gap.
Just on that, the custody healthcare, I noticed they've done a self-assessment and they're developing an action plan. Just wondered how advanced the action plan was, and would that come in front of us?
So that's coming through our Care Clinical and Professional Governance group. I don't know if Alison or Lisa want to comment on that.
Sorry, I just can't recall the last time it came through, but it does absolutely come through our CCPG, and I have seen an updated action plan with the actions progressing, including one on translation services. So it's definitely progressing. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. And I know we're trying to get them all kind of in a similar format. Spot the ex-accountant. The financial tables for Angus show an overspend as a negative. The financial table for Dundee shows an underspend as a negative, and Perth and Kinross is silent. So could we try and get them aligned? We have all three different ways. And the only reason I picked that up was because I was looking at the Angus one first, and of course read the Dundee one, and I was like, they're in a really good position. And then realised it was round the other way. So are we happy to approve the recommendations? Yep. And it's good to see that coming together, Jill, so thanks for that. Item 13, Tayside Risk Management Strategy. Jill again.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So this is the updated Tayside IGB Risk Management Strategy brought to us as an updated version for approval. The refreshed document reflects the continued commitment to strengthening consistent, proportionate and system-wide approaches to risk management across health and social care partnerships in Tayside, and aligned to good practice that's set out in the Scottish Public Finance Manual and the Orange Book. The strategy itself builds on previous arrangements and has been revised to ensure it remains fit for purpose, supports effective decision making at all levels, and provides clear guidance on risk identification, escalation, assurance and accountability across integrated services and partner responsibilities. It is intended to support both operational and strategic risk management while enabling constructive challenge and transparency through our own governance and assurance frameworks. This has also been considered at Dundee and Perth and Kinross Integration Joint Board. It was approved at Dundee. I don't know the outcome of P&K because it's happening as we speak as well. But Abby is on the call. I don't know, Abby, if you want to add anything to that, but the approval of the updated strategy will just continue to confirm our alignment with other partner IGBs across the patch, with a focus on quality, safety, value and outcomes for our population. But Abby might want to add more.
Yep, Abby.
Yeah, thank you. It was just to say, so following the approval of the strategy, each IJB will also be working to develop a supporting risk management framework, and that will detail how the strategy will be applied in practice. The strategy itself is quite a high-level document that encompasses all of Tayside, but the risk management frameworks will reflect the unique context of each IJB, the structures, the delegated functions and the partnership arrangements. So that will be something that will be progressing in the new year. Thank you.
Thanks for that. Questions, or are we happy to approve the recommendations? Good. Excellent. Takes us on to item 14, the strategic commissioning plan. Jill.
Thank you, Chair. So this report is brought forward following a previous report to IJB, where I'm getting some feedback here. We agreed that we would bring an updated position to IJB. So quite a straightforward report, Chair, and happy to move straight to questions.
Questions, or are we happy to approve the recommendations? Approve the recommendations. Excellent. Here, that takes us on to item 15, which was withdrawn, and item 16, clinical care and professional governance assurance report. And that'd be yourself, Alison.
Thank you, Chair. So you see the report here, which has come as the result of collaboration across Tayside in terms of our clinical care and professional governance arrangements, and also with our Chief Social Worker with regard to the ongoing requirement to look at our social work standards as part of this. This is a new format of report which is more streamlined and reflects well the NHS Tayside clinical governance framework, and work is ongoing to implement that across all our services. The report outlines the level of assurance supplied through our NHS Tayside clinical governance structures, which has been reasonable across all our services and as a whole for our clinical governance forum. So there's ongoing development of assurance and risk and resilience through our regular meeting with good engagement and really good integrated discussions across many of our services and also external partners. So although this is not such a report with such operational detail as maybe included previously, I would like to give assurance that that's still absolutely happening, even though this is more concise and more at a strategic level for the IJB today. So, thank you. Happy for any questions.
Thanks, Alison. Do we have any questions, observations, or are we happy just to approve the recommendations?
Linda's got her hand up.
Yeah, sorry, Linda, you've got your hand up. Apologies.
I mean, it's not really a question. It was just an observation, just to say. I chair the Clinical Governance Committee in the NHS Tayside, and Sam and Steve are also both in that committee. And I guess it was interesting, particular report. And I guess we've had quite a lot of discussion in Clinical Governance Committee around the introduction of the CGQAM, CGQAM meeting, and also, of course, the Clinical Governance Framework. And I was just really interested to know from an IJB perspective and the Health and Social Care Partnership, is that working for you? Because it looks here like, there's opportunities obviously at the CGQAM meeting for lots of discussions. It's just really out of interest how those changes are working.
Alison, do you want to come back in?
So certainly within the Health and Social Care Partnership services, it works across our health and our social care services to have that quality management system, and it's very much adopting the national approach described by HIS. So our services are really engaged with that, and at service level that's working very well. The conversations at CGQAM are quite mature in terms of learning across the whole system. Where I do think there is work ongoing is where clinical effectiveness isn't decided within an individual service, where we need to work as a whole system. And I, alongside Chris Schofield here, I'm working with our MCN colleagues on how we develop clinical standards, clinical effectiveness, and ways of working that are not just highly clinically effective services, but clinically effective systems, and that work is absolutely ongoing. So I'm finding the clinical governance framework is allowing us to focus our services on what really matters and really rich conversations. Alongside that, some of the more routine data, such as how many educational modules are completed, appraisal, these things that are important but that can be gathered by electronically and considered in dashboards for services so that we can keep up to date, but we don't need to be discussing it all the time. That has been really helpful to allow the conversations around the table to be around on issues, things that really matter. So absolutely, we're finding it helpful, but still a bit of work to do to automate some of the sort of really important but more transactional data in terms of just making sure we're meeting all our requirements within services. Sorry if that doesn't make sense, but that's my understanding of it.
Thank you very much. That's helpful.
Yeah, I think Jill's going to come in as well.
Yeah, thanks, Linda and Alison and yourself have described it from a health perspective, and just to say that Kirsty and I and Ron are having conversations around how we can have a similar approach from a council perspective as well. So for IJB members, just that assurance that that is a bit of a journey that we're on with Angus Council as well.
Thanks, Jill. Thanks, Alison. Does that answer your question, Linda? Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks. That's
Yeah. Kirsty.
Thanks. I had probably more of a process kind of question. So in terms of the reports that are presented to the group, for example, the social work and social care reports, there are several, and the level of assurance is reasonable. What then goes back to give them advice, or in terms of directed improvement actions, or is the loop closed in terms of going back to the service to say this is the advice of the group, or how does that work, I guess is my question.
So we discuss the feedback from NHS Tayside through from CG Quam. We discuss that at CCPG meetings. We have service representation across all our services for every meeting, and when we're discussing the levels of assurance, that's based on quite an in-depth discussion on the reports that the services produce. So the feedback is provided by the team in real time, so they're part of that conversation. They're not sending a report and it's decided elsewhere. They are part of the discussion, and at the end they'll be offering reasonable assurance, and we would be accepting it unless there was conversations. The conversation tends to be more nuanced rather than just a yes or no binary response. It tends to be, this is reasonable assurance because you've demonstrated that you've really improved and are just about meeting reasonable, or it can be you're really, really highly developed and you're at a high level of reasonable assurance, but it's still not substantial, but for these reasons. It's a more nuanced conversation than just a binary reasonable or not. It really is a conversation around maturity of systems, knowing where your gaps are, where the risks are at the meetings.
Happy to approve the recommendations? Excellent. Okay, that takes us on to item 17, the winter plan for 25-26. Jill.
Thank you. So this is presented to the Integration Joint Board for noting. The NHS Tayside Winter Plan 25-26 sets out the system-wide arrangements across NHS Tayside and the 3 health and social care partnerships to prepare and respond to the anticipated pressures of the winter period. I think it's fair to say that it has been a whole system approach to taking forward the planning for winter, recognising a lot of the critical interdependencies between acute primary care and community health and social care and social work, and we have also included independent and third sector provision in that, as well as our partner organisation. It focuses on maintaining patient safety, service continuity and quality of care, whilst trying to continue to support the effective flow across the system during periods of increased demand, both in terms of workload coming through and workforce pressure for staff. So the key elements of the plan include proactive demand and capacity management, strengthened community-based alternatives to admission where it's clinically safe and clinically appropriate to do so, discharge and flow optimisation, as well as workforce resilience, and a clear escalation process and decision-making framework. And collectively, those arrangements give assurance that clear and effective escalation and decision-making frameworks are in place to support a coordinated and proportionate response across the system. The NHS Tayside plan works alongside the local health and social care partnerships business continuity plans, and just as a note, this plan provides assurance that there are appropriate system level preparations in place, recognising the need for ongoing oversight over the period. Just to acknowledge where things are in terms of the current position with flu, obviously that has been a challenging few weeks for us, and as part of the work that we're doing to support the population and staff, I am really pleased to note that Angus, the uptake for COVID and flu vaccination, both as a population in Angus and for our health and social care workers, is above the both Tayside and Scotland average. So that's really, really positive from an Angus perspective. So happy to take any questions. Yeah.
Thanks, Jill. And I know how much work goes into pulling all of that together. And you call it a winter plan, but you get tested during the summer these years as well now. So have we got any questions, Andrew?
It's not about the plan itself, it's really just about that last piece of information. So, I mean, whilst it's welcome that Angus is above Scottish and Tayside levels for a vaccination, from a clinic, very concerning about the overall levels of vaccination. They are significantly, as in 40–50% lower than they used to be a matter of 5–6 years ago, especially for flu, and that's a cause for concern. So anything that we can do to highlight and promote the uptake of vaccination amongst our vulnerable population would be welcome.
Yeah.
It's a national picture, it's not. So.
No. Sorry, Jill, you want to come?
Yeah, thank you, Andrew. Just to give assurance, and Public Health are looking at how we can further engage, not just with the population, but actually with our workforce as well, to further increase the uptake. But absolutely recognise it as a national position.
Yeah, I would support what you've just said, Andrew. I fully agree, and I wonder if we need to look at how we review what's happened this year for next year, because this is something that's really important every winter, and I'd like to make sure that we do everything we can to ensure we get it right. And I appreciate it's a national problem, but maybe there is things that we could be doing locally to make sure that we get it right next year.
Okay. Happy with the recommendations? Yep. Excellent. Okay, so that takes us on to item 18, which is the updated work plan. Sorry, I'm getting excited. I feel like I'm Santa this year. We're going to be finished by 4 o'clock. Okay. I wish it was Christmas every 2 weeks after an IJB.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Happy to move straight to questions or recommendations.
We're happy to approve. Yep. Excellent. Okay. Okay, so that concludes today's business. The date of the next meeting is Wednesday, the 25th of February 2026 at 2 p.m. Just before we kind of wrap up,
what you were getting away for.
I suppose as the festive kind of season approaches, on behalf of the IGB, or I'm sure I'm speaking on behalf of the IGB, I'd just like to take a moment to recognise and thank our frontline staff and managers, carers and partners for their commitment in continuing to deliver key services and transformation. It's clear from a range of service user stories that we've heard throughout the year that our efforts can continue to make a meaningful difference to people and communities that we serve. I'd also like to thank all the unpaid carers across Angus to make such a significant contribution to our communities. And as we look ahead to 2026, I'm looking forward to the opportunities we'll have to build on the achievements of this year and continue making a positive impact together. So Jill, if you could please pass on our thanks to everyone. And I know for many of us, it will be at home and a quiet festive period, but there'll be a lot of staff that will be working right the way through. And that's certainly not lost on me, the effort and dedication from these people. I suppose really we've kind of sort of touched on it, but we've got a kind of retirees, if I can call them that. I'm not quite sure they will be completely retiring, but if we start with yourself, Andrew, I think 6 years you've been IJB service user rep, and you've decided to step down from your role. Clearly, audit has just tipped you over the edge with excitement. I'm sure Sam will fill your shoes well there. But I believe you're also stepping down as a member of the IJB Strategic Planning Group, and obviously the Audit Committee, where you obviously served as chair. I'd like to express my sincere thanks on behalf of the board for your dedicated service as our service user rep. Your insight, commitment and thoughtful contributions have ensured that the voice of people with lived experience remains central to our discussions and decisions. We're truly grateful for the time, energy and dedication you've given to this role, Andrew. And we hope you take great pride in knowing the difference you have made, and we wish you the very best for the future, and you enjoy a nice, restful Christmas and New Year. And then, of course, we couldn't let our trusted financial advisor, Sandy, leave without a little word or two. And obviously, in behalf of the IJB, Sandy, I'd like to thank you for your outstanding leadership and significant contribution to the IJB and the Angus Health and Social Care Partnership over a number of years. I think you said this was your 65th presentation of a finance report or something. If you get withdrawal symptoms, you can also watch the video in February. Obviously, your hard work dedication hasn't gone unnoticed, and you've successfully guided the IJB's finances since its inception. And as CFO, you've led the organisation through a continually changing and challenging financial landscape, never shying away from difficult conversations. And just from a personal perspective, you've managed to convey quite often difficult technical aspects of finance in a real way that lay people can understand. And that's a real skill to be able to do that, Sandy. It's a real skill to be able to do that. And I understand that Angus led the way with the appointment of the first IJB Chief Finance Officer in Tayside. And we're fortunate that Angus has benefited from your expertise and steady leadership. Your work behind the scenes has ensured that our teams on the ground can focus on providing the best possible care for the population we serve. Your commitment to improving health and social care services and to enhancing outcomes for the people of Angus has been exemplary. You are definitely leaving behind a strong legacy for your successor to build on. I know that you've been a hugely respected colleague, not only locally, but further afield too. And again, from a personal perspective, Sandy, coming in 15, 18 months ago, you've been a power of support to me and have taken the time and effort to sit down and walk me through the complexities of the IJB's finances. A personal thanks from me there. The fact you've been so approachable and supportive to so many people, together with your ability to make complex issues understandable, has been greatly appreciated. And I know that you'll be missed by all those who have worked with you. So all that remains for me to say is that we wish you all the best for the future. hope you enjoy your Christmas and New Year and start planning for your spare time, which there will be an inordinate amount of compared to the hours you probably have to put in working here. So, as I said, thank you from the IJB, and a personal thanks from me, Sandy, for all your support, and I wish you every success for the future. Thank you. You're never quick, Sandy, so come on. You've got 13 minutes tops.
No, I'll be super careful. Yeah, just a couple of thanks. I would like to say thanks for those words, Steve. Very much thank you to the management team I'm working with right now. A fantastic support, a great team, and I'm sure they'll be able to do as much as they can for the partnership going forward. Thanks very much to the board. We've had to make many difficult decisions over years. I'd like to think we've generally made the right decisions, fingers crossed. I think we probably have. I know it's been difficult at times. I'd like to acknowledge the input from people I've worked with in the previous years as well, great management teams and great board members as well, throughout the 10 years. I'd particularly like to thank the finance team, who've supported me incredibly well over the last few years and over the last 10 years as well. Not just me, but also the partnership, everybody working in the teams and everybody working in the IGB. Particular reference, obviously, to Jane. I'm delighted Jane's coming in to take over the role of the Chief Finance Officer. I'll do everything I can to support her over the coming weeks. It has been an absolute privilege to do this job, sometimes quite an uncomfortable privilege, of course, but it has been a privilege. I said that to Jill when I first kind of let her know what I was thinking. And I've done this for 10 years and 20 years before that in NHS finance, and I'd say it has been a privilege to do that. I'd say sometimes quite difficult. But right now, I suppose my main thought is I really do wish everybody well. It's difficult times for many different reasons, and I just hope everybody can kind of pull together, get things aligned as best you can. I do just wish everybody the best for the future. Thanks, Chair. Thanks, everybody.
Can we stop the live stream, please?